This video tutorial will go over the new returns functionality that has been added in LeadProsper. Returns allow a buyer to send you a list of leads that they would like to return, and with that, you are able to upload that list and return them on both the buyer and supplier level. This will be reflected in your analytics and your reporting. To start off, we will look at the analytics page in our LeadProsper account. Here you can see the current month's analytics for your selected campaign. You might also notice that this is the updated analytics view. As you can see, we have 184 accepted leads across the Solar Direct campaign, and we have 0 returned leads. Here's an example for when you might need a return. Let's say in the Solar Direct campaign, you might have a buyer that comes through and they say they want to return a few leads. The buyer will send you a CSV file similar to something like this spreadsheet, which will contain your identifiers such as lead ID, return reason, date, etc. We recommend having the buyer send you the lead ID so that you can use that as your identifier when you're doing the returns to ensure that it is correct. This is because the lead IDs are always unique. However, you can do it based on other values if you would like. One thing to note when you get a list like this, the buyer will usually give you a return reason. It is up to you, the user, ahead of time to go through the return reasons and ensure that they are valid and that you want to return all of them. If not, you are going to need to edit their file and remove whatever ones you do not want to be returned. To get started with setting up your returns, let's go back into LeadProsper. When you go to the Leads sidebar, you can see there is a new returns option. One thing about returns is that they are limited strictly to exclusive leads, meaning you cannot return a lead that is a shared lead. So, select Returns and select Create Your Own Return or New Return. For this process, we will just need to map the fields that you will want to use. Right at the start, you have our pop-up. Let's select our campaign we will be returning to from. For this example, we will use the Solar Direct campaign. Next, we have time period. By default, the time period will always be set up to the previous month. This is because, in most cases, you are never going to have a buyer sending you current leads to be returned. It will most likely always be month by month. For our example, we will select the month-to-date range. Lastly, for this page, we have the option to select who the buyer that we are returning for is. You can go back into your spreadsheet to see who the buyer is under the Buyer ID column. In this example, our buyer is Real Leads, LLC. One thing to note is you have to do a return for each buyer in each campaign. This is because you will never have a buyer send you a list of leads to be returned that include more than one buyer. So, you need to make sure that you are mapping to the right buyer. Click Next. Here you will need to upload the buyer file. Ensure that your file is formatted as a CSV. Upload the buyer file and click Next. Our next tab in setting up our returns is Mapping. Here we will need to map 3 different fields, which include the Unique Lead Identifier field, the Unique field from the campaign, and then the Reason field from File, which is the reason including the notes from the return. So, the first field here, the Unique Lead Identifier from File, is what you will map from the file, and then the next field, Unique field from campaign, is the field inside your campaign that you will map it to. Basically, this is saying, in the file, look for this specific field, and then find said specific field in the campaign. That is what will be used to identify the lead and return it. For the first 2 fields, we will need to select a field that will ensure a unique identifier for each lead. For this example, we will use email, since the examples in that field are unique. Map email for the first 2 fields. For the last field, select return reason. This is going to map the description field that was shown from the spreadsheet earlier. Click Next. Now we are in the Settings section. In this section, you will enter the email address that you will want to get the return report. You have the ability to send the return report to at most 3 different email addresses, in case there were other people who need the report. The other section on this page is titled, If one record matches multiple leads. We have Return All, which will return all the leads. There is also the option to return all except one. For this example, we will select Return All. Lastly, we have the confirmation page. Be sure to look through and ensure that everything looks correct, and if it does, select I confirm that the above information is correct, and I want to proceed, and then select Proceed with Return. Refresh the page and you will see the return has been created successfully and that the status is done. Now that the return is done processing, you will see matched, which is the leads that were able to be returned based on the identifier field that you used. Not matched would be, for example, if you had a lead where the email address didn't match anything within the given time range within this campaign, then it would show as not matched. Failed could be for any reason. A lot of times, failures could be if the leads just don't exist. Like if they give you a list of leads and there are 2 or 3 leads that don't exist in your actual campaign, then it will show up as failed. And then there's the total number of return leads. Looking further into the numbers, Lead Prosper went through the Solar Direct campaign and matched the emails of the 13 leads that needed to be returned and were submitted. Select Download and you will get a file with this data. In the files that were downloaded, each supplier gets their own file that you can go through to double check. Let's go over what the downloaded files, the return files, include. First, looking back at your original CSV file sent from the buyer, we can see that they wanted to return leads from 2 different suppliers, Rise Solar and Lead Giant Media. You can see here the 5 leads from Lead Giant Media, and if we go to our returns files for that supplier, we can see they match the same 5 from the original file. Going back to the buyer return test sample, we can see there are 8 leads from Rise Solar. If we go to Rise Solar's return file, we can see the same 8 leads match. Now if we go back to the returns page, you can see all these returns went through, and there were no failures. The matches may not work if, again, there are no leads found that match the identifier fields you used, or could fail if the lead doesn't exist or something similar. If we go back to the Analytics tab, we will now see the updated analytics. To see the previous month or any other time period, select the date on the top left to change the date range. For this example, we will select the same time range used for the returns earlier, which is month to date. Here are the leads for the Solar Direct campaign, along with all the other campaign data. If we scroll over, we can see the return leads. You can see all 13 of those leads were returned, and we see that the buyer returned amount was $103.05. Additionally on this page, all the numbers at the top get adjusted for the returns. This means any returns that take place will be removed from the buy and the sell, depending on how it was returned. This is how returns work. You can also see more in-depth analytics of each individual return lead in the Leads tab. To do this, go to the Leads tab and pull up your campaign. In this case, we will select the Solar Direct campaign. Make sure to use the same date range that you have been using. Here, you will see the leads that were returned have a tag that says Return, and if you hover over it, the reason the lead was returned is also shown. Additionally, this will show up in your exports from now on. This is how to set up returns in Lead Prosper. Thank you for watching.